welcome everyone. Thank you for coming in today. I feel with that title, I feel like I should have some kind of rallying cry. You're revolutionaries, great. Yes, well, if you're expecting to take up arms and go and storm Sheffield on behalf of Kids Media, sorry to disappoint. But what we will be talking about today is really the revolution, or evolution, I should say, in how content is made, funded, how we monetize it, where the value is. Hands up how many people in this room who spend a lot of their day thinking about such things: funding, value, monetization. Same. So we're going to dig into that today, because I think it's fair to say that funding is changing, it's challenging. Commissioners are funding fewer shows and to a lesser extent than they have in previous years. It leaves producers pulling together a patchwork, a jigsaw of funding that often comes with a whole myriad of stipulations and obligations that can be tricky to juggle. Capital isn't flowing in from investors, neither. Why? Because there's a lot of restrictions, rightly, around kids' content. So whilst copyright regulations safeguard kids, it also makes it hard to monetize kids' content. We now live in an ad revenue generated world, don't we? Where kids' content is much harder to monetize when we think about CPMs. If you do get content made, revenues, what are the opportunities for revenues? Where do we look for those revenues? Because media rights values are changing. Distribution is changing. The opportunities for making money are changing. And media is increasingly abundant. So it's hard then to make return on investment. Content's being consumed in new places, distributed in new places. Contrast this with creators who are platform native, so creators like on YouTube, who have plied their trade, who have learned how to be self-shooting directors, analysts. They're experts in monetization. And we've got a lot to learn from them too. So all of this brings with it challenge. We've got to be more resilient than ever, I think it's fair to say. So what we're going to do is we're going to unpick a lot of that here. I've got a super experienced panel who are going to share their experiences. We're going to figure out where there's value in the existing model. We're going to try and talk about where we see the future heading in order to make and create more great content for kids, which is obviously why we're all here. So before we get into it, I will introduce my panel here. Oops, I pressed that too many times. So I'm delighted to introduce Helga Arnardottir from Tulipop. We've got Anna Knapp from 560 Media Rights. In the middle there we have Elishba Idris, who's an animator and a creator herself at the very beginning of her journey. So lots for us to share with Elishba, but also learn from Elishba in terms of her journey. We've got Joel Silverman from Kids Know Best, and Helen from HoHo Entertainment. So, heard enough from me. I'm going to come to the lovely Anna first, who works for 560 Media. I want to talk about the value that's left in that traditional model. If this is our context now, but it's our start point for looking forward, tell us a little bit about you and what 560 Media does, and how you think about the value in the content and the media that we have currently. And I'm going to play something whilst you talk.
Yeah. So we're a secondary rights collection agent, and we collect royalties and monies for the secondary use of broadcasts, which you might know as equitable remuneration or fair compensation, which are rights that are additional, or revenues that are additional to the value you might receive from your licensing deals. And we really encourage rights holders to be aware of these rights and use them as part of their commercial negotiations that can be utilized in different ways of advancement and recoupment.
And how important is it for content creators or those who are managing content to consider those? We were talking before this panel about considering the value in your whole kind of pipeline, but very often that can was kicked down the road. You thought about it later. How important is it now in your view to start thinking about that as early as possible?
It is really important, because the value, it might not be in the first year of the broadcast that you see the value. It might be within 5 years or 7 years of actual broadcast that the value starts adding up. So it really does become a significant sum of money in the long run. And also IP is territorial. We have different rights being compensated in different territories. And it all just becomes a useful part of the finance and planning.
And so you manage and monitor those rights and you collect those revenues. On behalf of whom? Tell us some of your clients.
So some of our clients are Magic Light, we have distributors and public broadcasters, and in the UK and globally, and we collect rights globally over 10 different secondary rights that are being compensated.
And how is that changing in the landscape? Because we were speaking earlier about last week, there was the announcement from TF1, yes, who were then going to slot into Netflix in France. That's a whole different distribution model that then unlocks some secondary revenues. How does that impact the work that you do with your clients?
Well, so in the last 5 years and in the future, we definitely see new rights being will be compensated coming up. So in the last 5 years, we saw the retransmission ancillary services that's being compensated, catch-up services, and then the TF1 deal in France, where so traditionally streaming will not trigger secondary rights royalties. However, with the deals with TF1 was done, Netflix and Amazon Prime will likely be considered as retransmitters of broadcasts, which will then trigger retransmission revenue.
And is that something, I mean, for someone like Alishba, who's at the beginning of her career, obviously understanding things like rights and retransmissions and secondary windows, is that something that if people want to understand more about that, is that something, well, hopefully they can come and talk to you afterwards, but, resources, how do we share that kind of education with new and emerging kind of creators or that are earlier in their career?
I mean, this might sound really boring and really legal, but understanding your rights is the beginning and the starting point. So if you're really unfamiliar with law, and especially intellectual property law, the starting point for you might be as a creator to Google the corporate legislation and see what the exclusive rights are for rights holders, and then absorbing that information with you and then holding that together when you go into commercial negotiations with content partners.
Well, thank you, and it's super interesting in terms of thinking about that value as early as possible. I think currently it's something that you really have to think about, and you have to bring it up that stream and kind of be aware of it much earlier. I'm going to move on to you, Alishba, because obviously in speaking about this panel, and you're at the very beginning of your journey, monetization is very important to you. Just give us a summary of where you are now and what you're doing, and again, I'm going to play a little clip whilst you tell us that.
So my name's Alishba, and I've been on placement year, but here at Sheffield Hallam University we have a scheme called the Enterprise Scheme, and they basically give above startup funding and you can start your own business, and they teach you about how to do enterprise and stuff. So I've been doing research into how do you actually make these YouTube cartoons, because we hear all about like how do you monetize it and how do you actually do it. So I went and did a deep dive and spoke to loads of people, and I learned how to animate in that kind of style, and also learned like how other people are monetizing it and how do you build a community before you invest into a big pilot, because I've seen like nowadays new pilots are coming out, hundreds of pilots coming out from new creators like myself, but then you have like, but their Kickstarter didn't go well, or the funding didn't go well, they didn't get views, and that was because when you're starting out, you need to introduce people to your characters and to the world, and you can't just expect people to kind of like, if you give them something at the moment, to be like, what is this thing? So you got to slowly kind of like build your brand and kind of do it. I haven't started my YouTube channel. I have been in YouTube since like 2009. I remember watching My Little Pony on the thing. So I remember like seeing like when the cartoons were being uploaded, when Disney did it, when like brands started like being, YouTube is another way of monetizing it, because that's where the brands were. So I've kind of caught on to this early. So I've kind of been here for a while. One thing that I kind of struggled with when finding funding, I was applying to BFMI, North something funding, but I've been applying to all this funding, and I wasn't getting anything because I'm a student and they don't fund it. So I went down the enterprise route, where a lot of people don't know this, where if you like make merch, you can actually apply for funding. And that's how I got my funding to kickstart the series. So we had this thing called the Adam Bradley Award, and I pitched from out of 60 businesses about my product business and how I plan to promote it with the animation series, and further down the line how like the characters are merchandisable and marketable from all the research that I did. And now I was able to win Moho Pro 14, which is like a new animation software, and it's being used by a lot of indie animators at the moment to kind of speed up the workflow. So
sorry to interrupt. But that sounds like it's pretty labor intensive, right?
Yeah.
In finding that funding, in finding the ability to help unlock you being able to create, it almost sounds like that's a full-time job that takes you away from being able to create. Have you found that it's quite onerous and labor intensive to try and access that funding to help you continue?
Of course it is, because I'm the one that's I had to learn how to do social media marketing, how to use data analytics, how do you actually make contents behind the scenes to promote the content. I'm actually the one animating everything, I'm producing it, I'm funding it. So you'll find that you will have to do all the legwork by yourself, and to find these opportunities, try and find like-minded people. And I'm really lucky on the enterprise scheme that they have like coaches, and I was surrounded by a cohort of people, and there were people from previous years, so I got to speak to them, and there were people that I met as well who were like previous graduates as well. I've also been lucky as well because Sheffield Hallam is really great with like connecting us with industry. My mentor John, who has been helping me throughout the whole series, and he actually helped me develop the pitch into a pitch bible and professionally kind of understand that thing. And I think that's really important for us now, even though the industry is lacking. I think we all need to kind of band together and kind of still stay together as a community, because we can learn something from each other and give guidance to each other.
I think it's. I want to stop there just because I think it's really important to stop and acknowledge that, because we were talking about secondary rights and distribution earlier. I learned about that from years sitting at the BBC next to the Brighton Business Affairs team. I can see one of my ex-colleagues over there. but that's where I kind of absorbed that information. But we're in a situation now where a lot of younger creators are CEO of me. They're a one-man band, one-woman band, one-person band. So how do we as an industry help educate and bring those young creators along? And also we need to learn from creators. I think we all acknowledge that. So it feels like there's an opportunity there just to put out a rallying cry, not only to make access to funding a little bit easier, because it sounds to me like it is a proper, it's quite a struggle, but also how can we share this collective knowledge that we've all gathered over years and years in this industry to help creators, start out on their journey and continue? Because a lot of creators, and I speak to a lot of creators, they give up. Quite frankly, it's too hard, so they give up, and that's a shame. I'm going to come to you, Helen, just at this moment in time, because obviously you're at a different stage with Ho Ho Entertainment.
Completely different.
You've been around somewhat longer.
Too long.
Yes. But again, your operating context as Ho Ho Entertainment has also changed in terms of you are in charge of IP and brands, but again, where you distribute it, how you monetize it is changing. So I'll play your reel, and then let's hear from you in terms of how you're.
Who polishes the snow? Wipes the cobwebs from the moon? Who tells the bedtime stories to the stars? Who paints the colours on the rainbow and makes everything look new? Who looks after the sky, the cloud babies do?
Amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll come to Helga as well in a minute, because I think between you, there's some really interesting ways that you're funding and distributing content. But tell us about your channel. Tell us about YouTube. We saw YouTube, we saw
And
Econ
why?
there.
Why?
And
You know why? I think more than anything. So we, as an independent producer, distributor, our background is very traditional. We produced Cloud Babies in 2012, and 2013 for the BBC. It took a long time to raise the money to be able to put the show into production. Budget is big. And we, as with a lot of producers at the time when our license was coming to an end, the tax credit came in, there was a lot of shows being, commissioned. And sadly for us, we didn't get a relicense because there was a lot of content. But, as independent producers, we couldn't sit there and go, well, never mind, we'll just, move on to the next thing. We had a property we'd spent a lot of time, money, effort on. And we'd had other partners at the time as well. So YouTube was fairly new. It was a little bit like the Wild West. So we were working with another partner to help us with that. And then, like many, we got hit by corporate compliance and that sort of, kids is a bit risky, and then, of course, we had COVID.
Yeah.
And COVID was probably the catalyst for us, where, we were sat there thinking, everybody's going to on demand. Why are we not seeing, this same thing? And so we audited our channel and realised that actually there was a lot of things not being done that could be done.
Yes.
And from that we decided, right, well, we'll just do it ourselves. So we brought the channel management back in house. And started from there, and it's been a journey,
because you're not a huge team.
We're a tiny team, we're 4 people in total. So we are a small team, but we've been running the channel now for 5 years, all organically grown. Yeah. No paid advertising. The US is our 50% of our global views. We've never had a broadcast partner in the US. We run a shop in the US. We run 3 language channels, as you saw, English, Spanish, German. And we're still learning.
Yes.
We're learning. I think the biggest thing for us has been data.
Yes. And learning how to understand it.
Yeah.
Realize what it's telling you, take the signals. Again, you hear the words thinking like a creator a lot recently, but actually that's essentially what you have done, what we're forced to do. Think like a creator.
We were, and if you think back to when we developed the show and what we thought the show was and what we thought the show was going to be all about, you then kind of flip it on its head and you start looking at your data and going, well, actually, that's not really what our audience is seeing and what they're looking, for. And so for us, it's that learning curve has also taught us that the USP for us is all about bedtime. It's bedtime stories. It's winding down before bed. And so that then informs everything that we've done around the brand off screen. So, our picture books, our toy line, everything revolves around that USP that we've now
and that is data and insight really you wouldn't have got without having gone onto YouTube and started scrutinizing the data and what the audience were doing.
Yeah. And literally we can put out a video with, I don't know, sleep stories or something and then put something completely different out. Yes. And you just see the spike. Yeah. And you have to then tap into that.
Absolutely.
I guess the challenge for us is it was 52 episodes. So we have been washing, drying, rinsing, again and again and again. And we've been fortunate to do that. But the challenge now comes, and I know we're going to talk about this, is how you fund additional content and new content.
Yes. I'm aware, Joel, you're being very patient. But you know what? Before I come to Helga, I am just going to come to you because I think what Helen said is really interesting is, again, we're talking about value, and unlocking value is something that you get from insights, and that's what you do at Kids Know Best. It's not just scrutinizing the data from your own YouTube channel. It's being aware of all the other things that are happening around. Just tell us a bit about how you consider value on behalf of your clients and how you help them understand where it lies within their business.
I appreciate that. I'm really interested in listening to everyone's different perspectives on what IP is and what brand is and how you monetize. I come from a completely different background. I'm the least traditional person in this industry, I think. So I look at things in pure value terms, and I look at IP and ownership. And, you mentioned about the rights, these are things I've learned along the way. But for me, everything is about the value of the IP and how you can license that and monetize it. Now, I'm not a licensing person, but I understand that world, and I think that's where the new kind of content's going to be made, because there's a lot of worlds outside of the traditional kids space that are crying out for content that's going to reach a new audience, and they're going to fund that. Is my personal opinion. You know, as you mentioned, we work with global brands on helping them understand an audience that is very hard to reach, because on social platforms, kids shouldn't be there. We all know they are. But our job is to understand culture, understand how kids are gravitating towards things that ultimately they shouldn't be, or we perceive they shouldn't be. And look, when we were growing up, we were probably watching horror movies at like 8 years old. So we've always been doing things that we shouldn't do.
Yes, of course.
But the value of brand, I think, comes from ownership and holding on to that as long as you can, but then also striking deals to get that money in.
Yeah.
Because, you know, my business, we raise money from a family office. It's a completely unique way of scaling something. But there's people out there that are into IP in the non-traditional sense, because if you look at the most valuable brands on earth, and especially in the content world, that all kids brands, you know, no one...
Pokemon, Hello Kitty,
Even things like Minions, you know, multi-billion dollar like IP, no one's going to invest in another Shawshank Redemption and then put it on a T-shirt. Like, they're looking at things and going, hold on a second, there's a lot of opportunity here. And I'm getting a lot of inbounds from private equity companies that are looking globally at assets and saying, how do we monetize this? And the ones that will win are the people that have the ownership.
It's interesting that at that point about IP, now we're seeing IP as an asset kind of increase in value, because we know that there's a tsunami of AI stuff coming, and actually though that adds value to those IP that, you know, like I said, the Pokemon, the Hello Kitty, of this world, actually, because there is value within them, not just in licensing, but it's in the content,
in the storytelling.
And it is interesting, because having been in and around this business for a long time, you know, talking about monetization and commercialization and value, it felt a little bit grubby when you were making good stuff for kids. But actually, we're in this situation now where we have to, because we need to figure out how we're going to keep creating content for kids. And again, I work a lot with creators who have grown up creating content on YouTube. Oh, they see value in everything, and they know where the value is. And it's really interesting how they think about it. It's not a dirty word, but they also know their value and what works. They've taken the feedback from their audiences in the comments, and they've iterated their content accordingly. So they're much more thinking about that value and delivering value to their audience than perhaps those of us that have been around a long time perhaps have done in the past. I want to talk to you about your experience in funding your content, because I think it's really interesting how you've been approaching it. So let's have a look first and we'll get into it.
Midwinter Eve has arrived in Tulipop. Here it comes! But something is wrong. What's happening? Where are you going? The Northern Lights. Look! I hope Munchkin is okay. Now, 4 friends must journey to Cloud Castle to save Midwinter. A magical adventure awaits in Tulipop's A Midwinter Tale.
Tell us about
Should
that,
I go
Helga.
ahead? Well, this is a trailer from our most recent production. So we're making 3 half-hour films for preschoolers and families, following up on our big TV series finished and delivered last year, Tulipop Tales, which is now on screen in around just over 30 countries. And I do think this is an interesting example from a funding perspective, and talking about really how you need to be creative and have a multi-layered approach, really mixing traditional funding and any other source of financing you can find. So this is a co-production between Iceland and our Italian partners. It's commissioned by all the Nordic public broadcasters, so opening up opportunities to the traditional money in terms of grants and reimbursements. But additionally, it's commissioned by a theatre chain in Iceland as well. So it's a short film going both to cinemas and to TV. which is a bit unusual. And it opens up an opportunity for us as well to do these event-sized screenings for families, where we have our Tulip Pop mascots and characters, welcoming them for an experience, buying merch as well, and also having leaned into just a network of Icelandic companies to come in as companies that want to promote really good content for kids that really brings the whole family together as an experience. And for us with Tulip Pop, we have really, from the beginning, our ambition really has been to build a unique kids IP based on a world created by my co-founder and illustrator and product designer. So really to build an IP that can have the opportunity to be a classic, to being inspired by the Nordic classics like Pippi Longstocking, really wanting to create something that the whole family enjoys together and brings positive messages. And I relate to a lot of things Helen has been saying here, and of course, YouTube is a key part of our strategy. We're running 4 YouTube channels in-house, getting data, insights, all amazing, but big opportunities. Referring to what Anna was saying as well, I think those rights are often in the small print of distribution agreements, so really important for producers and content creators to be aware of this and kind of carve it out while you can. But I think it's, for us, it's, we really see this as a long-term project. It is a challenge, mixing traditional funding, but also we have been quite successful in finding investors that really believe in what we're doing and really believe in creating an IP that's bringing good values to kids and families in particular. And here at the CMC, there's been a lot of conversation about the importance of reading for kids, for example.
Yes.
And our firm belief is that co-viewing is equally important. And research has shown that if kids are watching with parents, then they're more likely. They ask questions, they're more likely to understand what's going on, and for us that's really important. And then, but of course, getting things made and funded really is a puzzle, and it's a way of finding every possible stream of revenue.
It is, and with that in mind, let's think about how that's going to happen going forward. So we've spoken about everybody's current experience. But really, I mean, you spoke about investors. Joel spoke about being contacted by investors. I mean, in your experience, just having gone through that process, are they willing to give patient capital? We spoke about time. If anything takes time to grow, it's a kid's IP. But in my experience, there's patient capital is not very often abundant. How have you found your investors? Have you had to take them on that journey and say you're not going to get a return on your investment within 12, 18 months? You know?
Well, I think for us, if we go maybe a step back, we started with Signy, my co-founder, being a product designer. We started by developing the IP into a beautiful range of products and building a fan base and brand awareness based on that. And for investors, as bankers, as any, like, if you finding a way to lower risk and build confidence in what you're doing is really important. So for us, we had a range of over 300 products, selling in hundreds of stores around the world. And while we were doing that, we were getting some revenue that enabled us to build the concept and develop it, because it does take time. If you really want to do something new, different, and that can possibly be a classic, it takes time. So that really helps. And of course, you have to be really careful with who you bring on board as an investor. And in this industry, yes, you need people that are patient.
Yes. Elishba, around your neck is some merchandise that you've also been producing that is helping you fund your content. So tell us about that.
So
what inspired you?
These characters, I've been making content since I was 10 years old, so I've been an animator for 10 years. And one thing that's really inspired me is I really like cartoons and things like that. And growing up, sometimes there was media that, you know, you get bored of waiting for new content to come out. So I decided to animate myself. It was just me and a bunch of friends. And we just animate our characters together, and we kind of found that fun. And then at 15, I then did a a college course in games art and concept art. And that's when indie animation and indie games were both booming. So I was like, I could just make an indie game. And so then I developed this as a series. And then I was sharing bits online, just between me and my friends, concept art, animation of the series and the characters. So this is the blue caterpillar here and his little fawn daughter. And then this is Demetria, she's from the Wasp and the Wig. So it was kind of like there was a bit of interest in the series, and I'd been sharing comics that I just do in my sketchbook and just put it on my Instagram story, and I was just posting like little tidbits of animation. And then it wasn't until my second year when I met John, I was like, I want to know more about how like IP is developed. And then I kind of learnt more from going to like CMC and Get Animated, Manchester Animation Festival, and I was talking to people, and when I was in the crowd, I think there was someone saying that like everyone put their hand up, like who's got their an animated concept or an animated show, and people putting their hands up, and we're like, oh, this is a thing that older people are doing. No one like my age is doing it. So then from there on, I did more research into how is it actually made, and I'm now started a merchandise business with my characters, and people really enjoy it.
And there's if anybody's heard of the amazing Digital Circus, which is a YouTube first animation by Glitch, they also funded their content by selling merch in between producing episodes. So not only do you have to be an expert in applying for funding and you're animating, you're now into merch, you've got to be an entrepreneur too, to be a creator. Is that something that you've really had to embrace as a mindset, Helen?
Absolutely. I mean, going back to, what we call traditional, if you want to call it that, having worked with big toy companies, big publishers, big licensing companies, and then, realizing that actually we had a really valuable property.
Yes.
We were starting to see that fan base grow. We were starting to get messages saying, where can I buy the toys? Where can I buy the books? And we were sat there going, well, we don't have any. And literally we started our new shop from the back of a bounce back loan during COVID.
Yeah.
So we went to the government. We said, right, we need a bounce back loan. What do you need it for? We're going to set up a new business. And from that, we set up Ho Ho Retail, which is really our e-commerce business. And it's it's small, it's niche. We had to be very, very decisive about what products we were going to source.
Yep.
Sourcing from China, that comes with all sorts of other issues. But thankfully working with some really great people. And we've just sold out of our products in the UK. We're hoping to launch a brand new range of products in the autumn, and those products are really being driven by the data. So we're able to kind of look at the data and go, if we wanted, we could do a whole massive range of toys, but why would we do that? We need to focus on what we know our fans like, what they're looking for, collectability, trend. It's a real mixture. We've had to learn a lot about, not looking at sort of what toy companies would traditionally do and say, this is a master toy line, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then 5 out of 7 of those products don't sell because nobody's interested in buying them. So it's been a real learning curve, and we've had to be entrepreneurial, even as a small business ourselves, even down to our publishing. Writing the books ourselves, printing the books ourselves, sending the books to America because it's cheaper to print in the UK than it is to print in the States. I mean, how crazy is that? But that's what we've been doing, and and doing relatively successfully. The issue still remains: how can you monetize enough to reinvest in new content?
Yeah.
And that's the bit that's really been difficult for us as well, because we have a piece of content that if we do anything new, we want it to match what we've got.
Yes.
But again, you've got to change your mindset for that. So
well, I think we will definitely dig into that shortly. But I just want to come to Joel, because what you've basically said is, yes, you have to read the signals. You said the word de-risk, and again, you can only do that if you are taking in data and information and insights. We were chatting about that, Joel, before. Again, when you have to try and hedge You know, you can't throw around the cash and just hope something hits. You know, every decision has to be made strategically and with intention. What can creators or you know, content owners do, in your view, to kind of read those signals? Obviously, this is your line of work, but, you know, helping inform. What can they do? Where can they look? Where are these signals?
I mean, by the way, if you want to waste a load of money, everyone's going to do it anyway. I wasted a ton of money trying to find what works. So as much as you're saying, like,
I mean, you're an entrepreneur yourself, yeah?
Yeah, and look, there's nothing, you learn from making mistakes as well. Like, I actually think down the years when I've built the business, wasting money is probably, you waste it really quickly, you don't ever waste it again. And I think that's really, really important to realise because, you know, as you mentioned, you've got to be scrappy and you've got to monetise.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the work we do is in the creator space now. The brands we work with, the likes of Hasbro and Lego and Nike and Disney, etc., all they want to do is reach an audience that is unreachable, and everyone here that's creating content is for an audience and they don't know how to distribute it. Creators are the same. Creators are creating their own worlds that they want an audience to come and fall in love with them, that they can monetize in different ways. And again, it is, you know, the reason why we exist is because we speak to kids. And, you know, I think it's so important to understand, to your point about what people are going to buy.
Yep.
The only way you can do that is to just keep iterating and keep changing. And, you know, I'm not a creative, so going through that process and being in love with what I've created, I can't get that psyche because it's just not the way I'm tuned. I'm tuned to what the audience is saying, and if they want to go to the left, I'm going because I think we can make a pound note there, and I find that interesting. And I know that's really hard in a creative world when people are so in love with what they got, but if there's no audience for it, no one's going to see it and no one's going to buy it.
And it is I mean, we say very often, oh, we're being led by our audience, but what that really does mean is sometimes following them.
Yeah.
Not trying to bend their will back to what we want them to do. You have to follow them. And I think that is something that a lot of these creators that are growing up on YouTube or TikTok, they know to do. It's instinctive to them. And they read those signals. Is that, you're nodding, Alicia, is that something that you do?
So this version that I've made, so this series, it's gone through like 14 iterations, the characters. So I reanimated the pilot like so many times. So the way that I'm going to be trialing and testing the content is that what I will do is I will put like 5 shorts out, which I think from research that I've done before, from topics that people have been interested in. If they don't do well, or if I get comments of saying like, oh, I like this character, I want to see more of them, or this didn't do well, or I don't like that, I can take that information and then I can come up with the next 5 shorts. And, you know, I can do A/B testing. I can test out, like, if the characters, if you want to explore this side of the world, if people want more, like, lore, if people want to focus on character development, people want to focus on character, like, relationships. Because also a thing is like, these characters that I've designed into merch, it's just, like, one big advertisement as well. So, like, if my audience likes a certain character, I can make animations that can design merch. And this is what Glitch and Spindle Horse have done with, where they had like the bigger episodes, but then they have these shorts, and what they'll do is they will get like the popular characters from like Jax is really popular, and like Blitz from Hello Hoover Bars. They will make shorts based on those characters. A lot of bash like that indie animators get is like, people say these characters need more screen time to develop, and that's really hard when you're spending like a few months in development and then you're just kind of like dropping these shorts as like 30-minute shorts. So doing these short like 5-minute, 2-minute, 30-second animations is a way to A/B test before you actually then invest, because what it's doing in the long run as well, when you make bigger animated pilots and stuff like that, your audience already has like content already. And my audience, who I've actually been building it right now, is through community, and it's how I've grown really rapidly as well. It's because I have my audience as part of the actual development of the series. So with each episode, what I'll actually do, which is probably what people won't do is I'll actually post the rough animations, and then people can give their feedback on it. And if someone doesn't like or it doesn't get engagement, then I will stop production and then I'll go back and rewrite it. Which at a point you've got to stop doing that and just like trust your gut.
But the important message is that you test and learn, and that is something that is really important and actually is facilitated by a lot of these digital platforms, is that, again, we go back to de-risking and optimizing your chances of creating something that you will extract value from at some point. And actually that is a really interesting way to approach it, and something that didn't used to happen. You know, so you can, like you said, you can iterate and you can test and learn, which is something that is really important to bear in mind. But those alternative ways for making content, and I'll throw it open now. Let's really get into the weeds of this. You know, content, making it faster and cheaper. How are we going to go about doing that in this new operating context where there's not huge swathes of cash being thrown around? How do you keep the cost of, I mean, well, Helen made a good point in terms of the original Cloud Babies was of a certain level, so you actually have to think about that. But similarly, how are you thinking about how you make content faster and cheaper?
Really simply by looking at trends, looking at what's working. So for us, we know storytelling, we know bedtime stories, that's really important. So our books are doing well. So we're thinking, okay, so how can we create some new content that is really bedtime story led? How can we go back to our original assets, our original character rigs, you know? Can we somehow
squeeze out the value?
Can we somehow, and maybe using AI? We don't know. It's something we're exploring. You know, how can we create a piece of content that isn't necessarily fully animated? You know, bells and whistles, the whole thing. Maybe it's quite simply animated, but the characters will still look the same. So it'll still be the same rig, same background, but it'll be gentle and it'll be soft. So the characters will still look the same. And I think that's a really important part. And that's something that we're exploring at the moment because, again, it allows us to have content that will sit not just on YouTube, but will then, you know, translate into audio, that'll then translate into physical product.
So
we
again,
have to be
thinking
really
about how you can
across
really
everything.
maximise, work it hard.
Work it really, really hard. You know, be really smart, work it hard. Songs, you know, we know that the songs have done really well for us. So that's an obvious one for us is say, right, let's do more songs. But to keep the cost down, we will look at songs and themes within the series so that we can then clip them with existing animation. But still possibly look at the other alternative of having new animation. But again, the songs do really well on YouTube. I mean, songs and animation are the two top things that work for YouTube Kids anyway. But then knowing that we can then put them on, you know, on audio platforms as well. And also that taps into another key element of royalties and collection.
Yes.
Because then you're talking about music royalties and, you know, publishing royalties. So you have to be thinking about all these little things as you're, you know, working through these new ways of working. It's I hate to say it, it's the exploitation. You know,
well,
you're
it is,
exploiting
it's the optimization of those revenues and thinking about that and not being scared to think about it.
You have to. You absolutely have to. So
and I relate to a lot of things you're saying. And for us, it really is a balance. I think it's finding smart ways to produce content in lean ways, having a lean operation. For us, story really is key. So that's something we don't want to compromise on. Of course, kids discovering Tulip Pop on YouTube is amazing, but we want it to be parent approved. We want even parents to show Tulip Pop to their kids. Hey, here is something that you may like.
And ultimately break into the parents' wallets.
Yes, of course. It's a question of creating a world that the whole family enjoys. And really that the whole family wants to be a part of their world. And we love nothing more than hearing that the whole family watched the Tulip Pop episode and was humming the theme song over breakfast because music is a big revenue pot as well. So it is a balance. And for us, trying to find smart ways and then to build a classic IP, you really need to keep content coming.
Yes.
So we've outlined a very ambitious content plan, and it is a challenge in this environment to make all the puzzles fit together. But it's kind of one project at a time.
We're going to come to the audience in 5 minutes. So if you do have questions, we've got a ton of experience, very big brains here. So do be having to think about what questions you might want to ask in 5 minutes. So, but before we go to the audience, let's crystal ball gaze. I mean, you know, from your point of view and your businesses, where do you see things heading? Where is that puck going? Where should we be looking as creators, as passionate kids media execs, as people who want to still continue creating, but also like, pay the mortgage, preferably? I'll start with you, Helen. What are
Where
your
should we
predictions?
be looking? I'd like to look at sponsorship and partnerships. And I know, Joel, we kind of talked about this before, and we've looked into it at length.
Yeah.
It is very, very difficult. You know, YouTube don't allow it. You know, there's so many rules and regulations. But in actual fact, that could be the one thing that could help us. So just as an example, you know, if we had Johnson & Johnson's helping us to create content, it's a perfect match.
I think there's probably a whole panel in whether current regulations are
so
fit.
my crystal ball would be enabling us to, you know, to do what people in drama and factual and film have been doing forever, is look into brand partnerships to help us to, you know, to fund our content.
It's certainly happening in main YouTube with adult content. I'm seeing it in sports
It is,
as
and
well.
it needs to happen in kids as well.
Yeah, Joel.
I mean, I think we spoke before about the definition of content being for kids or not for kids, and that's, again, you could talk about regulations all you want, but what's interesting, unless you're going preschool, if you're creating something, why does it have to be for kids? It could be for anyone, and you're seeing that now, certainly, you know, with the rise of the phrase kidult and how people are purchasing things. And it's the same with viewership, and we're talking about sponsorship, and there's so many brands out there that don't even understand who's purchasing their product, and that could be across multiple industries. And to your point about getting those sponsorships up, I think you just don't frame it as, oh, it's got to be like made for kids.
It's not, it's not selling. Actually, it could be helping create, you know, good quality content. And the fact that we were talking about creators, I don't know if anyone's seen like Paris Hilton building out her own IP in Paris and Pups. Like, that's going to be the future. You're going to get quasi-celebrities, quasi-creators moving into these worlds. And that's why ownership of idea and ownership of IP is very important, because you can work with these people or whoever represents them and split the ownership. Because these guys have deep pockets. They're represented by the biggest agents in the world, the IMGs, the CAAs. You could go to them with an idea, get them into the show, get them to promote it, and it just becomes self-fulfilling. You know, I said I wasn't in the world of, you know, quote unquote traditional, so I don't know how the funding works to have an opinion on it. I know that there's a lot of people out there that would love to be involved in creating their own assets, and there's a lot of creatives here that probably add a lot of value to, you know, a load of celebrities, a load of creators. Absolutely, and brands, who want to access this audience but want to do it in the right way, and actually they don't know how to do it, so there could be some really good partnerships there. How about you? I mean, obviously the future is in front of you, Elise, but what are your hopes for it?
So I really hope that in the future that it gets easier to make content and that this stuff it does. But I think going forward, where do I see like a project like mine going? I'll be honest, with YouTube and being online, it's really, really hard to be seen in front of people. And I've actually like been thinking of like doing brand collaborations to help charities. So my thing is like, if you've seen this like an Alice in Wonderland adaptation, so I've been looking at like charities. So there's like they did Alice Day recently. So going to events like that to help charities to kind of going around the UK. It's a very big IP, and it's very relevant still to this day. And there's like different versions of it. So doing things like that, like doing brand collaborations and maybe going to more in-person events, and just trying to build the brand itself. I want to say like, of course, like if I keep posting on YouTube, I'll eventually crack the code and I'll find like what people like. If you do, can you let us know? but it's all just about a waiting game. At the moment, people have been telling me post on YouTube, but I know like if I post on YouTube, the algorithm will just spit my content out and it will not be seen. So being strategic as well. So don't worry about right now if you aren't on YouTube. What you should be thinking about is, okay, what is the content that I'm going to release? Like, so for me, I'm planning on doing like 15-minute shorts that I can then pump into TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, and then have like it be on like specific days. Also think about like how you can reuse that content. Like, would you rather be this, A, B? Kind of like interact with the audience as well.
Yeah.
I know we've all been online, but also think about how you can go to in-person events. So I go to market events when I can to sell the products in person, and you'll find more people will discover you that way. And also kind of see what kind of can you collaborate with people with like a similar interest? Are there creators like in CMC right now who are creating a similar show idea to you? Can you guys like band together and kind of make like a small community where you kind of like uplift each other?
Yeah, I think working together is going to be something that we'll see much more of, that collaboration. Again, it's something that more kind of digitally native creators tend to do. We tend to do less, but we should do more. Quickly with Anna and Helga. Yes,
so
tell us.
keep secondary rights in mind in your commercial negotiations and be creative in the way you utilize them. We've given an advance to our client based on pre-sales, so advance on royalties based on the pre-sales that they made. It's also not unusual for us to producers have deals with distributors where the distributor recoups a certain percentage of royalties, after which the royalties the rights are reverted to the producer. So be open, cover the basis of the traditional rights, and while you also look for new opportunities.
That's very valuable. Yes, definitely need to cover the basis.
Yes.
And how about you, Helga?
Well,
Where do
maybe
you
just-
see things
I think
going?
there's a huge opportunity in this industry, and I think there's so many challenges. We have to say that too, and just talking to possible investors. The animation industry is huge, the licensing industry is huge, and there are examples of amazing classic brands that are making great revenue decades after decade, and that's really our focus. And I personally believe there's an underutilized opportunity to increase interest among investors to put in money into IPs and building IPs and building worlds and stories for kids and families, and bringing positivity and good messages and to families around the world. So I think that's something we could maybe do more of.
Amazing. Well, thank you. And most of you stayed around. Well done. Thank you. Who's got a question for our panel? Come on, you've got the opportunity to pick some big brains here. Eddie, hello.
So an observation, a question, and a proposal quickly. The observation, I find it criminal that universities, be they film schools, animation schools, or art schools, don't teach financial literacy. And I believe that should be an absolutely fundamental part of any arts program, film program, animation program. Teaching how rights work, teaching how money works should be fundamental to curriculum.
Agree.
There's also financial illiteracy in the business. How many development executives don't understand how much it costs to make something and how much money things make? They don't actually understand the selling process. They don't understand remuneration of their own content. Given that financial literacy, where I find hope is that with all of you individual entrepreneurial creators, you're teaching yourself all of this. How many of you, by just show of hands, be it Helen or Helga or Elishba, how many of you had a business plan? How many of you had budgets? How many of you had that in advance of creating your product? Right? And how did you learn that? Who taught you that?
So for us, like I mentioned, we have the enterprise scheme at Sheffield Hallam University. So anyone and everyone, so any student can join this. You could pitch a business idea, and then they have like a thing where at the beginning it will be very structured, where you will be taught like how you finance, how you freelance, like all about these questions. We get guest speakers to come in, and then what they will start to do is they will start to push us to go, okay, so if there's someone specific in your industry, they'll push us to kind of ask those questions and ask people about how do we do this. And then further down that line, they then just kind of give it like a free-for-all, which I kind of like, because everyone then is kind of like either going to make their films, people are like making food or whatever, and the business. And that's kind of how we've learned. But I do agree, my professor's here, he's in the crowd, that, although we do have things that are like live industry projects, now is a time where we've pivoted, where you're a freelancer now. The traditional model of you going to work for a studio is gone now. And now we're relying on creators. It's all in America right now, where they've pivoted towards now teaching students about like their funding models. So like here we have the Beer for My Short Film Fund. How do you monetize? How do you use Kickstarter? How do you use Patreon? How do you use YouTube? And how do you build a brand?
Right.
Eddie, do you think we need to be better as an industry in doing that?
100%. I think CMC has an opportunity to do a part 2 to this panel.
Yeah.
So my proposal to you is let's meet again next year and actually walk us through what does a business plan look like? What are the revenue streams?
Yeah.
What can we build going into this in advance?
I think it's a super point, yes.
All right?
And
You're on record saying that now, you know.
And I'll help you do it.
And just one thing to add there, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. I think there needs to be far more modules on university courses about rights, about intellectual property, about ownership. You know, I've been invited a few times to go to universities and do a one-off talk about IP and, you know, and those rights, but it's not enough. It needs to be part of a curriculum when you're, you know, in doing a course that involves creating content and creating.
Yeah, Anna and I were
IP.
talking just before this, and again, I was saying that I was chatting to a YouTube creator who had done some horrendous deals earlier on in their creative career because they didn't know any better.
Exactly.
But, you know, I mean, that was part of the learning journey, but it didn't really need to happen. We've got a few minutes left. Anyone else got a burning question? I'm being signalled at from the back. Right, you're not allowed to leave whilst I read this. The room now needs to be cleared as usual for the next session, but the lunches are in the same venues as yesterday. And there's some birthday cupcakes today in the hubs for tea and coffee sponsors. It's Blue Zoo's birthday, so the cupcakes are to celebrate Blue Zoo's birthday. So happy birthday to the Blue Zooers. If you booked Commissioner Speed meetings today, they're taking place in the workstation at 12:30, and they are sponsored by A Productions. And next in here is Fair Play for All, with the emphasis on the AI of fair. So that promises to be a good one. Thank you for listening and for taking part. Much appreciated. Please show your appreciation for my panel too.